Hey guys, I'm going to explain the podcast gear that I use for both in-person and remote interviews. And the location right now is the couch in my living room. And this couch is where a lot of my interviews have been recorded, whether that's with Mike Rowe, Adam Robinson, many others, Dave Camarillo. They typically sit here, and then I sit over here, and then the gear sits where my ass is right now. And I'm going to show you a bunch of that. So there are many different tools in the toolkit. This bag is a hunting bag, which is a little small for hunting, and it's probably for fishing. It's a Cabela's bag, and I decided to use it as my studio in a bag, effectively, for podcasting. So I will travel with this. I just came back from Austin, Texas, where I had this and was doing recording with, say, Cheryl Strayed and many others. So let's take a look inside. First, we have extra SD cards. Very important. Always have several backup SD cards, because you will end up having a tech issue when you least want to have a tech issue. First mic I'm going to show you is a Yellowtech mic. This one is a little quirky. This is from, or the model I think is IXM. And this is a very cool mic because it's all encapsulated, meaning you have the controls for recording and so on here, for playback here, and it records directly to an SD card at the bottom. So this particular mic is very useful for any recording on the road. I've recorded intros, the "Welcome to the Tim Ferriss Show, my name is Tim Ferriss, blah, blah, blah," at airports. I've done it in airplane bathrooms, not recommended for audio bounce, but nonetheless, very versatile. I use this because it also automatically levels what you record for many of my introductions, even if I have access to the rest of the gear that I'm going to show you, because it's so easy to use and so fast. So that's number one. And you will notice for all of these, backup batteries and backup SD card. Trust me on that, you want both. And since this will oftentimes go into a backpack separate from this bag, I have the backups in this itself. Next, we have the zoom. So this is an H6 zoom. I used to use the H4n, which I still sometimes use, but it is more primitive, easier to mess up. And this is the basic piece of equipment right here. So the H6 zoom is fantastic, and I upgraded for a host of reasons. Number one, the recording and LCD screen is much easier to use. And next, you have more ports available for more people. So the XLR cables, which I'll get to in a second, plug right in here. So I can very easily have 4 people recording to this device, and you can select which tracks you want to use. If you're recording, say, music or something like that, which I don't very often do, you can attach different types of extensions like these. I very rarely use those. And that is the H6. Fantastic device. I almost always use batteries as opposed to an outlet, because I never know if I'm going to have access to an outlet. So that is the H6. Now, how does this actually go together with everything else? I'll show you. XLR cables. All right, so I travel with many of these. The only times that I've had real issues with in-person recording has been due to loose fittings on XLR cables. So you always want to travel with many backups. And these plug directly into the side here, so like that. And then the next piece of the puzzle, so you can see I have a lot of these. The next piece of the puzzle is the mic that you use. So there are different options. Some people will use a lav mic, so a lavalier mic like this, and that will connect directly to an XLR cable of some type. What I've found for my guests and for purposes of simplicity is that I like a very simple Shure SM58 stage mic. These are used by comedians, they're used by, I'm sure, high school principals when they're making announcements in auditoriums. They are very hard to break. And you want to make sure that you get a wind cover, because you will otherwise have problems with your P's and so on, and sometimes S's, if you don't have something like this on the mic. These are relatively cheap. They're probably 60, 70 bucks max, and you can buy them in bulk. And they simply connect to the other end, and you're in business. You can record. Okay, so next up, we have lots of backups. Okay, lots and lots and lots of mics. You can imagine how much fun this is taking a bag like this through TSA. There are constantly problems. The next mic I'm going to show you is a little different. So this is the ATR 2100. This is an Audio-Technica mic. And what makes this different is not only does it have an XLR, but it also has USB. So I will use this when I'm recording remotely and doing something via telephone, i.e. Skype. So this connects via USB to the computer, and then I'll set up this mic stand next to the computer. So it fits in just like so, and I'm off to the races. A few important points. Number one, I use Skype and I use Ecamm call recorder. There are many other options for recording. I'm accustomed to that, works fine for me, so that is what I use. Other solutions allow you to record local audio on the part of the person who is the interviewee. What I have found, because I've been interviewed via such software before, is it creates a burden for the person on the other end. And if they are, say, older or less tech savvy, it creates more problems. Sometimes, okay? So there's a lot of tech, it's obviously developing, but I use Ecamm call recorder and I use this USB mic. You want to split the recording so that you have two different tracks, two different wave files for both yourself and the interviewee. This is very important. If someone is a low talker and let's say you're a high talker or a loud talker, you need to be able to adjust those in post-production. All right, so those are some of the basics that you will find in this first compartment of the bag, and I'll cover just a few more things and then we can move on. Number one, what's on this side? Well, I have charging cables for iPhone, which I have all over the place. I have this, what is this? Looks like a garbage bag. This is a poncho. If you get caught in the rain, trust me, you do not want this bag getting wet with all of this stuff. So this is a poncho that fits easily in my hand and will cover this and a backpack and everything else that I have on. What are these? Batteries. Every long interview you do, use new batteries. It seems wasteful, but I promise you it's better than losing a half hour or an hour of audio. Always have backup audio. And then we have a separate charger. This is a charger and a speaker if I want to use it, but this is a backup charger for my iPhone, which I will sometimes in a pinch use to record with an extension, which can be a Rode or Shure microphone that connects directly to the Lightning port. All right, so you can really see that when in doubt, have a backup. As Jocko Willink, who did his first public interview on this podcast, said, and I've heard from other Navy SEALs, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. That means have a backup, because if you only have one of something, it's going to break or you're going to lose it. And then, case in point, we have more foam. All right, just in case something goes wonky. And this is going to seem odd, but trust me, you want to have lots of extra headphones. It seems like overkill, but when you better to have and not need than to need and not have. And on that point, guess what I also have in all of my bags? Toothbrush. You need an extra toothbrush, because you will find out when you have many different bags that you will, for whatever reason, forget your goddamn toothbrush all the time. And then last, I will show you when I'm recording via phone, there are a few ways that I keep track of notes and prep for a given podcast. If you're in person, a lot of podcasters will advise that you should record in person because it's better. There's a certain je ne sais quoi, something that you get in person that you don't get via the phone. I actually disagree completely. I think that if you are a novice podcaster, or even if you're very experienced, many of you will get better results recording via Skype. Why? Because when you're recording audio only, you're able to put people more at ease in many cases. You're able to look at notes. So not only can you look at what you've prepared, but you can Google things. You can look up tangents that you want to explore. You can write down things that you want to explore later without distracting the interviewee. Very important. And there are also a lot of people, even celebrities, who when you hit that record button in front of them, that red light comes on, they turn into different people. Either they shut down or they go into their sound bites. their prepared script, whatever it might be. So I really enjoy recording via Skype. And there are a number of tools that I use to make it much more effective. So one of them is Evernote. I use Evernote dozens of times a day and have for years. Full disclosure, I became an advisor to the company in 2009 because I ended up using it. And I've used it for research related to all of my books. But this is a sample screen, and I'm not going to read all of it to you, but this was for B.J. Miller, who is a palliative care physician, hugely popular episode. Nobody really knew his name, and he has helped more than 1,000 people to die as a hospice physician. And at the top I have how I was introduced, so via a partner at IDEO, via Adam Gazzaley, who is a neuroscientist who's also been on this podcast. And then below that, I just have small prompts. An accidental doctor, which is something I read about him. Why is he an accidental doctor? ZenHospice.org. Sophomore Princeton Dinky. Okay, so this was a reference to his accident, which he had in college, an electrocution accident where he lost 3 limbs. He was a triple amputee. So I wanted to talk about that. Photos from that time, I noticed he was always smiling. So it just says photos from that time, always smiling. How manage? Question mark. All right. And so on and so forth. Struggle is a source of beauty, no pain, no joy. And then questions TF. These are just thoughts that occur to me as I'm taking these notes. So struggle is a source of beauty. That's a quote from him that I wanted to dig into. Then after that, so TF, how develop more empathy, more compassion, which is literally suffering together. Practices, exercises, question mark. Okay, so that is how I could refer to notes looking at a screen, which is very difficult to do in person. So I am a big fan of recording remotely, but now, since I've done 200 plus episodes, I feel comfortable winging it more in person. That doesn't make one better than the other. But if I want to connect with someone, then perhaps I will try to do so in person and then have a dinner afterwards, say, or lunch beforehand, which is what I did with Jocko. We had lunch beforehand, then podcast, then dinner together. And we've since become good friends. Another thing that I would point out, that is, how do you punch above your weight class in getting guests? I'm constantly asked, how did you get so-and-so? How did you get so-and-so? How did you get a Jamie Foxx? How did you get Edward Norton? Well, first, Jamie Foxx took a year and a half to schedule. Edward took a year. I did those in person, but I went to them, all right? So number one, I'm always going to volunteer to go to them. But how it started was doing things remotely, i.e., this is not an in-person interview. We can do it via Skype whenever is convenient for you. That is how you get guests that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. You don't ask them to come to your living room in San Francisco, particularly if they're located in another city or another state. All right, so that's if I'm using a computer for notes. If I am using, oh no, you know what, pause for a second. If on the other hand, you are in person and you don't want to have a laptop open, which I don't like to do, then I will resort to using a notebook. I'll always have a nice bound notebook like this. This is from Chris Sacca and my friends at Lowercase Capital. I tend to get given a lot of moleskins, so here we are. And I'll show you a few examples of how I use this because it's, I think, from a formatting perspective, reasonably important. So for Kara Swisher, for instance, very popular episode, very well known, perhaps the most feared and respected journalist simultaneously in tech, for good reason. So it's going to look like a mess, but here is my page for that interview. Those were the prompts. And I will do my homework, and I'll take notes, then I will box in, so there's a circle or a box around certain questions that I want to make sure I absolutely hit. Those may only be 3 to 5, but I know those are going to provoke stories and answers that I can then use to follow up with separate questions. All right, so that is for Swisher. And then afterwards, or even during the interview, I will take notes. There are a couple of edits here that I wanted to make, or stops that we made for getting water or taking a bathroom break. So I'll take edit notes also on the paper. Typically, I want to always have my notes for a guest on 1 or 2 pages. Why? Because I don't want to be flipping back and forth and distracting things. So for John Crowley, the real-life Captain America, and Bruce Banner, I kid you not, this is one of my most popular episodes in the last few months. You got to check this guy out. So John Crowley, I've known John for years, so the notes are going to be fewer. It's just one page here. And then I'll take notes. So as we adjusted volume, or as I adjusted volume, because I don't want to interrupt him, I'm playing with the levels on the Zoom, which probably just drives my editor crazy. And I edited all my own podcasts for the first, I'd say, 20 to 30. You have one page. All right. Then here we have a page on Jerzy Gregorek, who is the 62-year-old lion of Olympic weightlifting. The guy is super, super legit. Here we have 2 or even 3. No, it's 2 pages. These are 2 pages for Marie Kondo. So Marie Kondo, or Marie Kondo in the US, is known for she's very famous for, I think it's the Japanese art of tidying up, the magic art of tidying up. I can never remember the title. I'm sorry, Marie, but huge bestseller, sold millions and millions and millions of copies. This is a point where if we were doing an interview, I would look that up on my computer, but you can only do that remotely. And then I will go through afterwards, and I highlighted things. You can see here some highlighter notes. Those highlighter notes are for my intro. So I always record the intros and the bios of guests afterward. Why? Because I don't want to sit there with them sitting, facing me, reading off some long introduction, and I want to make sure I really get it right. So to get it right, I want to read. And to do that, I prefer to do it at home so that I'm not distracting anyone. And these highlights are related to things that I might put in the intro or in the show notes that accompany the podcasts. You can see a bunch of examples of show notes at tim.blog/podcast for every possible episode. And that is really about it. And you can see again that things I liked, I will also highlight just for my own reference, and then edit notes. So a phone call came in at 10 minutes and 15 seconds into the audio, and I will send that to my editor. So I keep saying editor, editor, editor. What does that mean? Well, you are going to want somebody to help you to clean up your audio. There are some easy tools that you can use if you don't have much in terms of money. One would be Auphonic, auphonic.com. You upload your audio, and then it does a lot of the leveling and hum reduction and so on. Let's say there's an air conditioner, automatically. You like that, tech people? All right, automatically. Automagically, sorry. I had a little bit too much caffeine today. It's so exciting. All right, let me show you something else that may be helpful. So we talked about, say, the BJ Miller preparation. What we didn't talk about is what I send to editors and other people. So how do I collaborate with other people to get stuff done? Well, let's talk about Debbie Millman. So Debbie Millman, I'll pull it up in Evernote, and we have a document that looks like this. And it's pretty short in this case. So we have Debbie Millman podcast. All right, and then at the top I have headlines in all bold and all caps, and these are ideas for headlines for the podcast. Then edit notes. If there are any glitches or issues, or in the intro I mention author of 6 books twice, please remove one mention. I also flub twice, remove one or both. All right, so these are the things you need to fix. Audio files, which is then a link to Dropbox. So I upload all of my audio files to Dropbox in a folder that's named after the guest. And then blog posts. So if there's any type of photograph in particular that I want to use, or any type of bio that I want to use, then I will drop it in here. Sometimes I type it out. Other times I will record the intro, and then we'll see here under blog posts it says, please base text off of the podcast intro audio, but add editorial and creative director of print magazine, end quote, somewhere. Names I mention in the intro that you might need spelling for: Massimo Vignelli, Milton Glaser, Stephen Heller, etc. And then see Dropbox for social handles. So I'll ask guests in advance to supply photos they own that we can use, that they own, very important. And then also preferred bio, social handles, and so on. And this document, so this is an Evernote doc that I can share. I'll take that Evernote link and I'll drop it into Slack. So in Slack, there is a Tim Ferriss Show channel, and I'll say at whoever I'm trying to get the attention of, new, all caps, podcast ready for editing, guest name, link, thank you for confirming receipt. Then it's off my plate. At that point, it goes out, and unless there's something, like here, for instance, it says, note, I need to see the blog post and approve before it goes live. But otherwise, I am done with the podcast. It gets slated. There's a Google Doc where we have the schedule. It gets slated, and I no longer have to worry about it. Everything else is handled. So that, in a huge nutshell, is how I record, prep, and even move podcasts into post-production. So hope you guys find that helpful. This is very, very simple. So literally with stuff in this bag and this, that's all I've needed to get to 150 million downloads and counting. And I have no plans on making it more sophisticated because, as Morgan Spurlock, famed documentary filmmaker and nonfiction TV producer and host, has said, once you get fancy, fancy gets broken. So don't get too fancy. Hope that's helpful. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see my favorite piece of content that I put out every week, it is a short newsletter, 5 Bullet Friday. It's free. It's 5 bullet points with the coolest things that I have been finding, using, testing in a given week. I put it out every Friday. You can digest it in about 5 minutes. Take a look. 5 Bullet Friday.